I know. I always feel good, like after they do it good. Yeah. No, it's been good, and that and walking on the trail. The board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Present.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys.
Here.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Boyd.
Present.
Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Present.
Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Tyus. 12 present, you have quorum.
A quorum being present, we will dispense with line item 3 and instead move to the special order of the day. Alderwoman from the 6th, if you want to approach the dais for the presentation of resolution 15.
Can we ask the clerk to? I just say. All right. Thank you, Madam President. If the clerk could read Resolution 215, please.
Resolution 215. Whereas the grand opening of Viva Los Cardinals exhibit at St. Louis Cardinals Hall of Fame and Museum celebrating the rich legacy of Latino and Hispanic contributions to the St. Louis Cardinals and baseball overall will be on April 3rd, 2024 at 6 p.m. on the second floor of 601 Clark Avenue. Whereas the Viva Los Cardinals exhibit is built on the careers of 176 Latino and Hispanic players who have played for the Cardinals since its founding, legacy of players whose heritage spans the entire Hispanic world, including the Canary Island, Colombia, Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Honduras, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, Puerto Rico, Spain, and Venezuela. Whereas, as of 2023, 30% of the Major League Baseball players are Latino and or Hispanic. Whereas the exhibit sheds light on how Latino and Hispanic players in the United States face a backward, violent segregation system that labeled them as neither black nor white, but other. Whereas even after baseball barrier was shattered in 1947 by Jackie Robinson, Latino and Hispanic players, including those of the St. Louis Cardinals, continue to face widespread vicious racism alongside their black teammates. Whereas Viva Los Cardinals celebrates the history of Latino Hispanic Cardinals players going back to the Canary Islands, turned Cuban Alfredo Cabrera, the first Latino player to wear a Cardinal uniform in 1913. And whereas following Cabrera, Miguel Angel Mike Gonzalez Cordeiro, who in his 4 decades with the St. Louis Cardinals became the first Cuban coach in the Major League Baseball in 1934, and the first Latino baseball manager in Major League Baseball history in 1938. Whereas Cardinals fans around the world remember the legendary contributions of Latino and Hispanic players like Orlando Cepeda, Joaquin Andujar, Edgar Renteria, and as well as catcher Yadier Molina and designated hitter Albert Pujols, who have achieved near mystical status in St. Louis. Whereas Viva Los Cardinals will be emceed by St. Louis Spanish language commentator Polo Asensio, alongside Benji Molina. Whereas since 2009, all of 81 Cardinal home games have Spanish commentary that is passionate, emotional, and electric, combining Spanish Coliseum with Spanish phrasing. Whereas this progress contributes to an environment where this season tickets for the Cardinals games are among the highest in demand with major leagues. Whereas Viva Los Cardinals celebrates foremost the deep-rooted Latino and Hispanic cultures in St. Louis, a welcoming community of hope and competition, recently included St. Louis SC's legendary extraordinary Latino outreach, which altogether represent the very best of the city of St. Louis. Now, therefore, let it be resolved by the Honorable Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis that we pause in our deliberation to celebrate Viva Los Cardinals special exhibition at St. Louis Cardinals Hall of Fame Museum. We further direct the Clerk of the Board of Aldermen to spread a copy of this resolution across the minutes of the proceedings and prepare a commemorative copy to present at a time and place deemed appropriate by the sponsor. Introduced the 29th day of March, 2024 by the Honorable Daniela Velasquez, Alderwoman of the 6th Ward, and the following alderpersons: President Megan Green, Honorable Shane Cone, Honorable Michael Browning, Honorable Pamela Boyd, Honorable Rasheen Aldridge, and Honorable Annie Schweitzer.
Thank you, Clerk. And I am so proud to present this resolution to the St. Louis Cardinals for this up that honors the history and contributions to Latinos on the team. Baseball, now a global sport, started as a pastime in Cuba, spread throughout the Caribbean, and made its way into the heart of America, especially right here in St. Louis. And my father, who grew up in Puerto Rico, moved from the island to Brooklyn when he was 12, came from that culture of baseball. When he was a kid, he would play stickball in Mocha, where they didn't have gloves. Then when he moved to Brooklyn, he would play stickball in the streets. He would shine shoes at the corner of Broadway and Flushing for 15 cents to get enough money for a $1.50 or $2 ticket to see the Brooklyn Dodgers, where he saw Afro-Latinos like Cuban-born Sandy Amoros play at Ebbets Field, along with Jackie Robinson, who broke the color barrier for both Latinos and blacks in baseball. And when I was a kid, I knew how much my dad loved baseball, and he wanted all his kids to love baseball too. When I was about 6 years old, I got a call to go to the principal's office. Of course, I was scared. And I got there, and it was my dad, who didn't tell me he was going to come pick me up and take me to a baseball game. And it was my first baseball game at Busch Stadium, and it's one of my favorite memories of the sport. And so when I wrote this resolution, I had a chance to read it aloud to my dad. And I went through the names of players like Orlando Cepeda, Joaquin Andujar, and Edgar Renteria, and he knew which position they played and where they were from. And so I know that I could see the joy on his face as he reminisced about the game. And I know many of us here in the city share the love and joy of this, and I'm so glad that we can continue to share it today and through this upcoming exhibit, which really shares the remarkable history, like having the first Latino manager in MLB right here in St. Louis. So special thanks from our guests from Los Cardinals in the front office today. We have Amy Berra, curator for the St. Louis Cardinals, Selena Allen, Spanish broadcast coordinator and account service executive, Nick Garcia, associate general counsel for the Cardinals, and leader in the Puerto Rican community, Tony Maldonado. So thank you for all that you do for St. Louis, and thank you for highlighting this.
Amy's our curator that did all of this. She's done lots of research, and I'm just so very proud of the St. Louis Cardinals and Amy for putting this together and bringing our Hispanic Latin community together and welcoming them into Busch Stadium. So thank you guys.
From the Board of Aldermen, we definitely want to congratulate you on your wonderful work and achievements. If members of the board would like to get a picture, we can all gather over here and we'll get a group picture together. Alderwoman from the 10th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I want to congratulate you all again and recognize again the amazing contributions that you all have made here, not just to the city of St. Louis, but to the culture, right? And so I want to ask if not only my name be added, but if we can move the resolution in bank.
There's been a motion by the Alderwoman from the 10th to make Resolution 215 in bank. It's been seconded by the Alderman from the 14th. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Madam Clerk, if you could please make Resolution number 215 in bank.
So noted.
With that, before we take our picture, let's go ahead and adopt the courtesy resolution consent calendar. Alderwoman from the 10th, you're recognized on the motion to adopt the courtesy resolution consent calendar.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we adopt the resolution consent calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th, that we adopt the courtesy resolution consent calendar. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And if we want to gather over here for a quick picture, let's go ahead and do that. I'm a hugger.
Good morning. How are you?
Get down.
Today I can.
Okay.
Yeah, they did you.
Right. Approval of the introduction of honored guests. Any introduction of honored guests? Alderman from the 9th.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'd like to have Percy Green III as my honored guest today. Percy is a captain with the St. Louis Fire Department, vice chairman of the Firefighters Institute for Racial Equality, and a neighbor of mine just a block away. So, Percy, glad to have you.
Any further introduction of honored guests? Alderman from the 14th.
Thank you, Madam President and members of the body. As my honored guest, I would like to introduce my good friend, Alfred Montgomery. He's used to be a resident of Car Square. We grew up in the Car Square neighborhood. He's a great young man and trying to do some great things for the city of St. Louis. I'd like the body to make him feel welcome.
Need further introduction of honored guests. Woman from the 12th.
Madam President, members of the board, I'd like to introduce Ms. Beverly McClendon, who is a resident of the 12th Ward, been a longtime resident of the Ville and Greater Ville, and also lived in South St. Louis, so lived all around St. Louis.
And from the 10th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I would like to have as my honored guest in honor of Women's History Month all of the amazing women that are their Super Shero Award on the Superpower Is You luncheon. I congratulate all of us ladies. I wish I could be there to celebrate and cheer and clap for all of you all. You all deserve it. Thank you for all you do for not only your networks, but the entire city of St. Louis.
Any further introduction of honored guests? Any further introduction of honored guests? Seeing none, Alderwoman from the 10th, you're recognized on the approval of the minutes from Friday, March 8th, 2024.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we approve the minutes from Friday, March 8th, 2024.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderperson from the 14th, that we approve the minutes from Friday, March 8th, 2024. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in A, B, and C of the agenda and has been placed in the Google Drive for your review.
Does anyone wish to take, anyone wish to take any bills or resolutions off of any of our informal calendar? Anyone wish to take any bills Alderman from the 14th?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I would like to put Board Bill 44 on the perfection calendar.
Madam Clerk, could you please move Board Bill 44 to the end of the regular perfection calendar?
So noted.
Does anyone wish to take any further bills or resolutions off of
Excuse me.
Sorry, Alderwoman for the 12th.
I'd like to take Board Bill 158 and move it to the end of the perfection calendar. And I also have an amendment on the drive if people didn't see it.
Madam Clerk, if you could please move Board Bill, I'm sorry, what number did you say? 158? 158 to the end of the regular perfection calendar.
So noted.
Right. Anyone wish to take any further bills or resolutions off of any of our informal calendars? Seeing none. Alderman from the 4th, are you at the mic?
I'm not sure if I'm at the appropriate time here or if I should later in.
It's up to you. Okay. Let's see. First reading of board bills.
Madam President, I apologize. Yes. I am ready to proceed at this point, if that's all right.
Alderman from the 4th, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we can reconsider the veto of Mayor Jones on Board Bill 146. Shall the bill pass, the objection of the mayor thereto notwithstanding?
It's been moved by the alderperson from the 4th. Is there a second on the motion? Seconded by the alderman from the 5th that we reconsider Mayor Jones' veto of Board Bill number 146. This is a non-debatable motion per the charter. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Balmer. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Boyd. 10 aye votes and 3 no votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion from the Alderman from the 4th. All other business being suspended, the President shall in open session affix her signature hereto to the end that these may become. First reading of board bills.
We have none.
Second reading, reference to committee of board bills.
To the Public Infrastructure Committee, Board Bill 224 and 239. That's the extent of reference to Committee of Board Bills.
Second reading, report of standing committees.
The following board bills were reported out of HUD's committee with the due pass recommendation. Board Bill 143, Committee Sub, sponsored by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, President Green, and Alderwoman Velazquez. An ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, amending ordinance number 71393, ordinance number 71504, and ordinance number 71554 by reappropriating certain amounts specified herein as aggregated amount $5,823,010.47 for purposes with an emergency clause. Board Bill 176, sponsored by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, President Green, Alderman Cone, Alderman Aldridge, and Alderwoman Schweitzer. An ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment establishing an impact tenants fund to protect tenants in St. Louis City who are forced to relocate from their rental unit due to condemnation of occupancy due to landlord's failure to maintain the rental unit in conformance with code requirements containing the severability and emergency clause. Board Bill 181 as amended, sponsored by Alderman Aldridge, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, and Alderwoman Sanye. An ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, amending Section 1 of Ordinance Number 71554 and appropriating a portion of funds received under the American Rescue Plan Act 2021, Section 9901, Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Act, authorizing certain expenditures of such funds to the extent received, authorizing contracts and other documents to expend such fund to the extent received, containing the severability and emergency clause. Board Bill 218, sponsored by Alderman Narayan, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission on January the 17th, 2024, to change the zoning of property as indicated on district map from the A Single-Family Dwelling District to F Neighborhood Commercial District in City Block 5892, so as to include the described parcel of land in City Block 5892 containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 219, sponsored by Alderman Narayan, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission on September 13, 2023, to change the zoning of property as indicated on district map from the A Single-Family Dwelling District to F Neighborhood Commercial District in City Block 2781.05, so as to include the described parcel of land in City Block 2781.05 containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 227, Committee Sub as amended, sponsored by Alderwoman Sanye, an ordinance revising and amending portions of Ordinance Number 70798 pertaining to the Property Maintenance Code of the City of St. Louis to amend the plat and petition process only as it pertains to the opening, shelters, and other special residential housing. Board Bill 236, Committee Sub, as amended, sponsored by Alderman Ryan, President Green, and Alderwoman Sanye. An ordinance amending Section 3 of Ordinance Number 71620, codified in Chapter 3.160.030 of the City of St. Louis Revised Code of Ordinance, requiring applicants for a development proposal requesting a tax incentive to include information about previous tax incentives awarded to the same developer and previous tax incentive awards to past projects on same parcel, and requiring SLDC to share information about certain proposals with relevant labor unions and organizations, requiring the applicants list any past or existing agreements or contracts they have with labor organizations. The following board bills were reported out of public safety with a due pass recommendation. Board Bill 185, Committee Sub, sponsored by Alderman Aldridge. An ordinance setting forth regulations for the use of surveillance technology by the City of St. Louis, requiring surveillance technology usage and specific technologies be approved by the Board of Aldermen after required public hearing before any such surveillance technology may be used and plans may be put into practice, containing a severability and emergency clause. Board Bill 231, sponsored by Alderman Narayan and President Green. An ordinance amending ordinance number 70796, adopting the 2018 International Fire Code with the changes set forth in ordinance number 70796. The following board bills were reported out of public infrastructure with a due pass recommendation. Board Bill 105, Committee Sub, sponsored by Alderman Cone and President Green. An ordinance relating to traffic control, repealing ordinance number 66868 and establishing the Automated Camera Enforcement Act, authorizing installation of contracts relating to one or more automated traffic control systems as defined herein, and establishing standards for prosecution of violations of traffic control ordinances detected by automated traffic control systems. Board Bill 106, sponsored by Alderman Cone, President Green, and Alderwoman Schweitzer. An ordinance establishing the Neighborhood Traffic Safety Improvement Fund, authorizing the appropriation of such funds to be used for certain projects to prevent traffic accidents and fatalities and improve traffic safety citywide, requiring annual reports developed by the Street Department and presented to the Public Infrastructure Utilities Committee regarding the expenditure of funds, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 237, sponsored by Alderwoman Tyers, pursuant to ordinance number 70333, as amended by ordinance number 71394, an ordinance directing the Director of Streets to install speed humps to calm the flow of traffic on the 4400 block of Sexer, the 4600 block of Shirley Place, 4600 block of Richard Place, the 4600 block of Kenneth Place, 4600 block of Court, 4600 block of Bircher, the 46 through the 4700 blocks of Carter in the Penrose neighborhood, the 47 through the 4800 block of Greer, the 47 through the 4800 block of Labadie, the 47 through the 4800 block of Maffitt, the 47 through the 4800 block of Northland, the 47 through the 4800 block of Couples, 47 through the 4800 block of Leduc, 47 through the 4800 block of Cobrillion, 47 through the 4800 block of Hammond Place, and the Kingsway East neighborhood, various blocks in the Greater Ville neighborhood. Board Bill 238, sponsored by Alderman Aldridge, pursuant to ordinance number 70333, as amended by ordinance number 71394, an ordinance directing the Director of Streets to install speed humps to calm the flow of traffic on certain blocks in the 14th Ward. Board Bill 240, sponsored by Alderwoman Schweitzer, Alderman Browning, and Alderman Aldridge. An ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment authorizing the Department of Public Utilities to accept grant awards from the Drinking Water State Revolving Funds administered through the Missouri Department of Natural Resources with funding from the American Rescue Plan Act, the bipartisan infrastructure law containing an emergency clause. The following board bill was reported out of Budget and Public Employees with the due pass recommendation. Board Bill 234, sponsored by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, President Green, Alderwoman Schweitzer, Alderwoman Sanye, and Alderman Aldridge. An ordinance adding one new section to ordinance number 62124, which added sections pertaining to requirements for bidders for service contracts with the city for janitorial and security services, containing a severability clause and an effective date clause. The following board bills were reported out of Health and Human Development with a due pass recommendation. Board Bill 205, sponsored by Alderwoman Keys, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment authorizing the Director of the Department of Health and Human Services on behalf of the City of St. Louis to accept the grant award from the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services in the amount of $305,000 to increase meal production capacity and infrastructure for the nutrition program, appropriating said funds and authorizing the Director of the Department of Human Services to expend such funds as permitted by the grant agreement and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 232, sponsored by Alderwoman Keys and Alderwoman Boyd, an ordinance directing the Director of City's Department of Health, Chief of the St. Louis Fire Department, and Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police Department to implement a program for a parent to deliver an infant to the care of the state without fear of prosecution as provided for Missouri's Safe Place for Newborns Act, and designate engine house and area patrol stations as location for receiving infants pursuant to new Safe Place for Newborn Act, designating Fire Department Engine House 17 as a location containing an effective date. That is the extent of the second reading report of standing committees.
Report of special committees.
We have none.
Board bills for perfection consent.
Board Bill 164, committee sub, sponsored by Alderman Cone, Alderwoman Velazquez, and Alderwoman Sanye. An ordinance providing for the amendment of ordinance number 64401 as codified in Chapter 8.37 of the Revised Code of the City of St. Louis in order to extend the opportunity to register domestic partnerships in the Domestic Partnership Registry of the City of St. Louis to employees of the City of St. Louis who do not live within a city, as well as city residents.
Madam Clerk, if you could please add me as a co-sponsor to 164 committee substitute.
So noted.
Thank you. Alderwoman from the 10th, you are recognized on the motion to adopt the board bills for the perfection consent calendar.
Thank you. May I be added as a co-sponsor as well, please?
Madam Clerk, please make note of that.
So noted.
Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to move to suspend the rules to add Board Bill number 218, to move Board Bills number 218 and 219 from the second read to the perfection consent calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 4th, seconded by the Alderman from the 2nd, that we suspend the rules for the purposes of moving. Could you please repeat the numbers again?
218 and 219.
218, Board Bills 218 and 219 from second reading over to perfection consent. Okay, you found him. Okay. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 4th, seconded by the Alderman from the 2nd, that we suspend the rules for the purposes of moving Board Bills 218 and 219 to the perfection consent calendar. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
He just put it in. He still got
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Orion. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Spencer.
Aye.
Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys. 14 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion from the Alderman from the 4th. If you could place Board Bills 218 and 219 at the end of the perfection consent calendar.
Board Bill 218, sponsored by Alderman Orion, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission on January the 17th, 2024, to change the zoning of property as indicated on district map from the A Single Family Dwelling District to F Neighborhood Commercial District in City Block 5892, so as to include the described parcel of land in City Block 5892 containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 219, sponsored by Alderman Narayan, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission on September 13th, 2023, to change the zoning of property as indicated on district map from A, single-family dwelling district to F, neighborhood commercial district in City Block 2781.05, so as to include the described parcel of land in City Block 2781.05 containing an emergency clause. That's the extent of board bills for perfection consent calendar.
Alderwoman from the 10th, you're recognized on the motion to adopt the board bills for the perfection consent calendar.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we adopt the board bills for perfection consent calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt the board bills for the perfection consent calendar. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Board bills for perfection.
Board Bill 226, as amended, sponsored by Alderwoman Sanye, an ordinance also known as Safe Temperatures in Rentals that provide a temperature performance standard to protect the health and safety of tenants from extreme temperatures, containing an enforcement provision, providing for penalties, containing a severability clause, and including an effective date.
Alderwoman from the 7th, you're recognized on the perfection of Board Bill 226 as amended.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to make a motion that we perfect Board Bill 226 as amended.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th, that we perfect Board Bill number 226 as amended. Alderwoman, you may.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. This bill has been the result of a lot of hard work, so I want to make sure that I acknowledge organizations like Homes for All and a lot of folks in the community who have worked to get us to this point. For me, within my direct experiences, folks who are really impacted by this are a lot of seniors. I get a lot of emails from folks within my community who talk about the fact that there's, their unit does not have a habitable temperature, and this bill kind of helps us to have some enforcement mechanisms to make sure that the folks in our city who are living in units that they're actually habitable, and if they're not, we have some abilities to do some enforcement so that that basic standard is set for our housing.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 12th.
Madam President, members of the board, if the Alderwoman from the 7th would yield.
The Alderwoman from the 7th yield to questioning from the Alderwoman from the 12th.
Yes.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Thank you. So we have a law that's called that you have to have a habitable place when people rent them. Okay. Now, I guess my question, which I support, my question is that your bill addresses where the landlord controls the heat. Is that what your bill controls? Because you could have tenants who lose their gas, they don't pay their gas bill or their light bill, and then the landlord has no control over that. So your bill is specifically for, excuse me, the landlords who can control the heat, right?
Yes.
Okay, and which I support that. And so do you have a base temperature in which the people would have, could you tell people so they would know about that, please?
65 degrees to 85 degrees.
65 to 85. Okay, and 65 would be in the winter, and 85 would be in the summer.
Correct.
Now, but here's the question. So what if people rent an apartment that doesn't have air conditioning? Because when I was younger, I lived on Clem in what is now, I don't know if it's the 7th ward, but Tower Grove. And so we had to buy our own air conditioning. So what happens if there's no central air? Then what happens with that?
So we intentionally left it open. We're not telling, the landlord or the property owner how they have to keep it cool, so long as it is cool. So we're intentional about not including central air because obviously there's different mechanisms for maintaining the temperature. So if there might be a window unit or whatever place, however it is provided, so long as the temperature is met.
But it is only if it was provided in the first place. If the landlord rents the apartment and says, I'm not providing, well, no landlord I know says no heat. But they do say no air conditioning, okay? So if they don't provide air conditioning, they're not responsible for the temperature. Then you have to go out and try to get something from Heat Up St. Louis or Cool Down St. Louis or somebody to help you, right? Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
But if you provide the heat or the air conditioning, then you're responsible for keeping it at a temperature that is habitable for people who are renting from you. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. That's a good bill. That's exactly a very good bill because that is fair. That's for a lot of other things. As a landlord, if I can't get something fixed the first time, I'll go buy a new one because I don't want to keep inconvenience the people. I expect my rent on the 1st to the 5th, and so my tenants have a right to have their things fixed. It was one other question I had. So, what are the penalties? So what happens if the landlord doesn't do that?
They'll go through the process that's outlined within the building division for when they enforce. So, the inspectors that we have, they will send an inspector out, and that same usual process for any other violations will apply to them.
I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry. I was saying that they will go through the process that's already outlined for when inspectors go out and the code is being violated. So the same usual penalties apply. We're not applying any special penalties. We'll send an inspector out, and then if something is wrong, we start that enforcement process.
So is the enforcement process then to go to housing court?
Not right away.
Okay, but I'm saying if they don't do it.
I mean, it could end up there. That would end up kind of going to the city councilor and the problem properties if it gets to that level. But hopefully just us being able to kind of give some notice and put the standard in place would encourage folks to make it adequate.
So I can tell you why I'm saying that, because if it goes to housing court, it'll be there forever and nothing gets done, okay? In fact, they just continue it, and so nothing gets done. I would also suggest that you might want to include, we have a mediation department a mediation unit that we started. Carol Howard sponsored the bill when she was the 14th Ward Alderwoman. That might be some way that you can do mediation before even you get to the building division or whatever, because as it increases and goes through, if the landlord doesn't do it and it goes through the steps, I guarantee you when it gets to housing, you should go sit in the housing court sometime and see. And you can see that people who do all kind of bad things, they don't ever do anything about them. So I'm hoping that, are there fines included before that, or are fines only after they would go to housing court?
So all of our process would be before housing court. Housing court would be the step. You would send in, a person would make a complaint. We would send an inspector out to start those conversations. We would issue a warning or a citation to the property owner. It would have to happen a couple of times before it to be escalated, and one of those escalations is that the building division can issue a fine.
All right, thank you. I have no further questions.
Any further discussion? I have an amendment here. Is that being Alderman from the 14th? Are you still planning an amendment to this bill? Okay, thank you. Just wanted to check. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Alderwoman from the 7th, you are recognized to close.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I think that conversation was, just very helpful. We just want to make sure that one of the protections that we're able to give people is that they're actually able to live within their unit, and that has a lot to do with the temperature that it's at. And I think, for me, I was surprised to learn that we kind of didn't have something there, and so hopefully this gives us another tool within our toolbox to make sure that folks are getting the housing quality and standards that they deserve.
Right. It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th, that we perfect Board Bill number 226 as amended. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Orion. Alderman Balmer. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer. Aye. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Aye. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Aye.
Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Keys. 14 aye votes.
By your vote, you have sustained the motion from the Alderwoman from the 7th to perfect Board Bill number 226 as amended.
Board Bill 44, Committee Sub as amended, sponsored by Alderman Aldridge, an ordinance pertaining to the permitting of surface parking lots as defined herein to be codified at Section 8.70.010 and a new Section 8.70.035 of the Revised Code of the City of St. Louis, establishing additional requirements for the same and containing a severability clause and an effective date.
Alderman from the 14th, you're recognized on the motion to perfect Board Bill number 44, committee substitute as amended.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move to perfect Board Bill 44, committee substitute as amended.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderperson from the 7th, that we perfect Board Bill number 44, committee substitute as amended. Alderman.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the committee. This is a piece of legislation that has come through this body before. What this does is it puts security measures in place around surface parking lots, mainly in the downtown area, and then thanks to Alderman from the 9th Ward bringing up, it will be one parking lot in his ward as well. Again, this just puts safety measures in place. Right now we have a lot of out-of-state owners and local owners who own these surface parking lots. They make a lot of money, but they're not putting protections in place to make sure the people that park their cars there. So what we're doing is saying that they need to make sure that there's adequate lighting, potholes be filled on the lots, proper paving, as well as security cameras, which was a new addition to this piece of legislation from past legislations. I do have a few cleanup amendments that I would like to offer. And before I offer one, I do want to thank again the Alderman from the 9th in the committee process. As the Alderman from the 10th Ward say, where it always happened and the work is done. We did add an amendment to the piece of legislation that addressed lighting and making sure that there wasn't lighting pollution when some of these parking lots are close to residential homes. So I do want to thank the Alderman from the 9th for that. Madam President, I have an amendment, number 1, that I would like to move to adopt for Board Bill 44, committee substitute as amended.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt amendment number 1 to Board Bill number 44, committee substitute as amended. Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President and members of the board. So this amendment, the goal of this amendment was we have some surface parking lots in the downtown area where the parking lot abuts a building, and we had put in language to ensure that if the building is adjacent to the alley where the parking lot is, we didn't want to stop like trash trucks to be able to get through these parking lots to pick up the trash, because some of these trash dumpsters are right on the side of a building, but then there's a parking lot. So what we're doing is we're going to be striking out that language. There's another amendment that I will make that cleaner, but as we looked at it, we didn't also want to exclude with this language saying that if there's any surface parking lot adjacent to an alley, they wouldn't have to do these security concerns. So we're just striking out on page 3, line 4, beginning on page 3 at line 4, striking out section E, sections of the lot adjacent to a public alley.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, it's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt amendment 1 to Board 44, committee substitute as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I will move to adopt amendment number 2 to Board Bill 44, committee substitute as amended.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd, that we adopt amendment number 2 to Board Bill number 44, committee substitute as amended. Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. On page 5, line 1, from the previous bill, it only had one requirement of it had to be fencing around these surface parking lots. We end up understanding that all these surface parking lots are different, and we didn't want to just do a one-size-fit-all, so we did put in other measures such as bollards, fencing, handscaping, and land earth mounds. But what we're adding is with those bollards, it has to be 12 inches apart. We did put continuous in there, but we also just wanted to strengthen the language around the bollards and make sure that they're not too spaced out where cars can actually get through these bollards. Again, just some cleanup and tightening around the security measures on the bollards. And with that, I close on that amendment.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, it's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd, that we adopt amendment number 2 to Board Bill number 44, committee substitute as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, I move to adopt amendment number 3 to Board Bill.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th, that we adopt amendment number 3 to Board Bill number 44, committee substitute as amended. Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. On page 6, line 6, from the previous bill, this was left out as we was going through. It was an error. We're saying at every entry and exit when a vehicle enter, there must be an attendant on duty or a security gate that is part of the automatic payment system or a mobile payment system. Again, a security measure is right at the front of these surface parking lots when people enter or exit them to make sure that there's some type of individual, which I'm not a big fan of, or a security gate that has an automatic payment system. And with that, I renew my motion.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, it's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th, that we adopt Amendment 3 to Board Bill number 44, Committee Substitute as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. This is the last amendment. I will move to adopt Amendment number 4 to Board Bill 44, Committee Substitute as amended.
Is there a second? It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th, that we adopt Amendment number 4 to Board Bill number 44, Committee Substitute as amended. Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Going back to the first amendment when we struck out sections adjacent to the alley, what we're doing with this on page 4, line 16, is putting a process in place. So if a parking lot feels like there is some type of hardship where they cannot be able to put a fence or a bollard or continuous masonry construction in certain parts of the parking lot, because understanding that some of these, again, parking lots are around right behind housing and there are trash trucks. So what we did is since the bill is already authorized at the Building Commission, will kind of be the lead entity for enforcement. We're putting a process in place for if a surface parking lot owner feels that they cannot put a fencing because it's a hardship, that they will work with the building division to get a waiver for part of that surface parking lot so that it wouldn't impede on people getting their trash picked up. And with that, Madam President, I renew my motion.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th, that we adopt Amendment number 4 to Board Bill number 44, Committee Substitute as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President, and members of the board for indulging me in those amendments. Again, I think this is a good step moving forward to try to reduce some of the crime that's happening on these surface parking lots. It's not the end-all, be-all. I know this is a piece of legislation that's been worked on for over 4 years. I want to thank the Downtown Neighborhood Association that's been working on this, St. Louis Parking, the Cardinals, everybody that's come to the table, again, to try to make these parking lots safe when people come downtown to either go out to eat or go to a game, to ensure that their cars are vandalized, putting more responsibilities on these owners to ensure that their property is protected with some type of security measures. And with that, I will renew my motion to perfect Board Bill 44, Committee Substitute as amended.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing Alderwoman from the 8th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I just want to commend the sponsor for taking an issue that has been long-standing down here at the Board of Aldermen, one that we've needed to address for as long as I've been down here, and working with all the stakeholders. I know this was a lot of work, getting a lot of different interested parties involved. And as a co-representative of the downtown district with a lot of parking lots, I just wanted to thank the sponsor for the work and for making sure that all the interested parties were a part of the process. And with that, I wanted to just state my support for the bill.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we perfect Board Bill number 44, Committee Substitute as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Board Bill 158, sponsored by Alderwoman Tyus, an ordinance prohibiting the issuance of or transfer of any package drink liquor license for any currently non-licensed premises within the boundaries of the 12th Ward Liquor Control District as established herein for a period of 4 years from the effective date hereof, containing an exception allowed during the moratorium period for the transfer of existing licenses only under certain circumstances listed below, containing an emergency clause.
Alderwoman from the 12th, you're recognized on the perfection of Board Bill number 158.
Madam President, members of the board, I have a motion to put before us Board Bill 158 as amended because there are several amendments. I have a marked copy on your desk as well as the clean copy and the amendments, but it's easier just if we use the 158 as amended before us for discussion.
Okay, do you want to first make the motion to perfect and then we'll take up the amendments?
Okay, Madam President, I move to perfect Board Bill 158.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 12th, seconded by the Alderman from the 5th, that we perfect Board Bill number 158. Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Madam President, members of the board, I have just one amendment, but it has several parts to it, and that's why I did Board Bill 158 as amended. So I can go through each amendment if you want me to, or I can put before us 158 as amended, if whichever way you want to do it. I did it both ways.
Why don't you put the amendment before us in totality, and then we can discuss it and vote.
All right, Madam President, I move to put Board Bill 158 as amended before us for discussion.
I think the motion needs to be adopt Amendment 1.
Okay, Board Bill 1. Madam President, I move to adopt Amendment number 1.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 12th, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th, that we adopt Amendment number 1 to Board Bill 158. Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Madam President, members of the board, Amendment number 1 makes several corrections to Board Bill 158. One of them is that why I had to take my board bill and put it on the informal is that the Alderman from the 11th used my board bill to have a board bill written for her. Unfortunately, the person who did her board bill took my boundaries and put in her board bill, and it actually got passed and signed into law. So then I had to wait for it to get signed into law and passed, and then I have to repeal the portion of that refers to my board bill. She's coming along with a different board bill because her board bill actually was all of the 12th ward, even though it said the 11th ward. So that's my first thing is that we're doing is we're going to exempt out in its entirety Section 2 of Ordinance 71774, which was the ordinance that was for the 11th ward but described the 12th ward. We have to be a lot more careful with what we're passing down here. Okay. The next thing we had is that we exempted in Board Bill 158 in this amendment, we exempted certain areas out for restaurants and for places that didn't touch up against housing. We exempted them out of this moratorium. We found some words, some mistakes. On one page, it was we had put 3 years when it should have been 4 years. We made a correction for that. And we took out pursuant to the provisions of Ordinance 61289, Section 140630A1 and A2, because that may not be a ordinance anymore with the changing of the liquor license. So we, with the changing of the excise bill, so we just put our exceptions in writing without saying it was pursuant to that ordinance. And last of all, there was a part which, no, that's all of it. So one of the exceptions was, we have two exceptions. One is for restaurants and bars and a place where we've already identified as we're going to make it a restaurant and bar area. And the other exception is some places where they don't touch any housing. I got a part of my ward that doesn't touch any housing, and it's up against industrial, so it makes no sense to do a moratorium for liquor there. We already have a gas station in each of those sections at each end of that area that has a liquor license, and there's no, they haven't created any problems, and so there's no reason to have a moratorium there.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Then it's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 12th, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th, that we adopt Amendment 1 to Board Bill number 158. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Alderwoman, you may proceed on Board Bill number 158 as amended.
Madam President, members of the board, I move to perfect Board Bill 158 as amended.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 12th, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th, that we perfect Board Bill number 8 as amended. Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Madam President, members of the board, again, this is a liquor moratorium only for the 12th ward. We do give exceptions for some places that we're going to create restaurant districts. I may be back later. I'm getting to know this very large ward. If there are other places that we can do exceptions for restaurants, then I will do it. In case you don't know, I have 12 neighborhoods. When I originally was elected, I had 4 neighborhoods, 3 residential and 1 commercial area. And so it's very large, and every portion of it is different. Some portions I know because they've been my neighbors. I have a portion of Baden, which never should have been done. The maps that we drew are ridiculous. But I will be working with those people to create, if they have exceptions they want also. There are some places, I've had a liquor moratorium mostly probably since the early 1990s because we just had so many liquor licenses and they cause a lot of problems in our community. And even when we identify the problems, our nuisance laws doesn't allow for us to close them down. We've taken liquor licenses away. We've done all kinds of things. But the best thing is to not have so many liquor licenses in North St. Louis. I don't mind if people go to a restaurant, they have a drink, they even take that bottle home. But what we have is a lot of little what people call convenience stores. But in our area, they're inconvenience stores. And in 2017, 35 places were raided. They were all in North St. Louis that were doing things illegally, and those were those convenience stores that people say we need. I prefer to put a bus system to take people to grocery stores, or we need to create some kind of thing that we would have healthy places that were actually grocery stores. But these convenience stores and a lot of the gas stations that have liquor, they're really liquor stores. They're not gas stations. They're not convenience stores, and they make the most of their money from liquor. So we have tried to stop that, especially in F neighborhood commercial districts, because they're right up against houses and they're staying up all night and they're creating a problem. And the best way we could do that is just do a moratorium so that we wouldn't have them popping up 4, 5, 6 at a time. And that is why we need a liquor moratorium again for the new 12th ward, because I already had it in the old 1st ward and the old 20th ward, which was pretty much the same thing, but the new 12th ward has different boundaries. And so we want the whole ward to have the same opportunities to make sure that we can put planning process in place that will keep them from popping up in places that they have no business being.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 12th, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th, that we perfect Board Bill number 158 as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Report of engrossment.
96 as amended, 180 committee sub, 60 at committee sub as amended, 220 and Board Bill 228.
Third reading and final passage of Board Bills consent.
Board Bill 96, Board Bill 96 as amended.
Alderwoman from the 10th, you are recognized on the motion to adopt the third reading and final passage of Board Bills on the consent calendar.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we adopt the third reading and final passage of Board Bills consent calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt the third reading and final passage of Board Bills on the consent calendar. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Orion. Alderman Balmer. Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Aye. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Aye. Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys. 14 aye votes.
By your vote, you have sustained the motion from the Alderwoman from the 10th to third read and finally pass the aforementioned bills. Third reading and final passage of Board Bills.
Board Bill 180 Committee Sub, sponsored by Alderwoman Sanye, President Green, Alderwoman Schweitzer, and Alderman Browning. An ordinance repealing ordinance number 67914, 60202, and 70456, which established and amended the City Housing Conservation Program and enacting in lieu thereof an ordinance that set forth the procedures, requirements, fees, regulation, inspections, issuance, and revocation of certificate of inspection for dwelling units, adding rental dwelling unit registration, containing an effective date and a severability clause.
Alderwoman from the 7th, you're recognized on the third reading and final passage of Board Bill number 180, Committee Substitute.
Thank you, Madam President and members of the board. I would like to make a motion that we third and final pass Board Bill 180, Committee Substitute.
Is there a second? It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd, that we third read and finally pass Board Bill number 180, Substitute. Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. This was something that we had a lot of discussion on last week, so I won't go too much more into detail, but this creates a rental registry for the city of St. Louis. It would enable us to establish a technology fund for the building division. It expands the housing conservation program and just put some things in place to hopefully help us also have better communication with property owners within our city and address issues when they arise, and to collect data on what our rental stock is, what we have, what we don't have, and where.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 12th.
Madam President, members of the board, I again rise in opposition of this bill. I told you I was original supporter of the Housing Conservation District before anybody else in North St. Louis would support it. People followed me. But I do not support putting it where people have not requested it. The Alderwoman from the 7th knows nothing about part of the place where she's placing it. The people watched it in the former 18th Ward. Not one person's called me and said, this is something that I want. I am a big supporter of making sure that people get things in their community that they want. And this was something that was sold to North St. Louis, who has a big problem with how zoning has been used against them over the years. Famously, I have several places in my ward that have restrictive covenants. I live on a street that had restrictive covenants where black people could not live. Famously, we also have Shelley v. Kramer in the 4600 block of Labadie, because black people could not live above a certain place, and when the black people moved into that particular house, they were told they couldn't live there. So I am opposed to putting the Conservation District without the people that used to be in the 18th Ward and are now in the part of the 12th Ward without their consent. Everybody else who's down here, they had consent, or else their elected officials instituted it. When I instituted it in what was the 20th Ward, we had 10 meetings across the ward to answer people's questions. I want to say it's not working the way it's supposed to. I'm deeply disappointed in the fees that we pay. They don't do the inspections the way they're supposed to, but it's something that I sold and we can try to make better. But my people had a say. The portion of the 18th Ward that I have does not have a say, and I'm opposed to somebody who lives across town coming and saying this is good for you and have no idea who the people are. They're very educated people, and the former alderman from the 18th is now our clerk, had a reason for why he didn't do this, and for her to be doing this is unconscionable to me. I will be coming back to take them right back out of it, because she didn't talk to me or ask me what was going on with it. She could also talk to the clerk. That didn't happen. There was a reason why he didn't do it. And in fact, when they tried to do it back a few years ago, before I came back, I guess, the alderman from which is now the 3rd testified that they had to do an amendment to the bill to take the 18th Ward out. So they have spoken very loudly, and I don't like using zoning codes and things against majority black, but now this is also a mixed neighborhood of people who have not asked for something. And that is why we have some things about wards and where people represent, because you get to have a much more in-person relationship with them than somebody else does. So I will be voting no against this, and I will be introducing a board bill to exempt that part of my ward back out of this. And if they want it, then I will do it. But I'm not okay with that happening, as is the Alderwoman from the 7th would not be okay if I introduce a board bill to exempt her part out. She's made a rookie mistake. I hope she will stop doing this and talk to people. Just because the building division says they want something does not and has not meant it was something that was in the best interest of the people who live in a community. And I'll request a roll call.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 3rd.
Eight. Okay, thank you. I just want to echo the comments that have been made previously with respect to this bill. I'll be voting present, not because I don't believe in it in spirit, because I have expressed this numerous times. I am supportive of things like housing conservation. I am supportive of improving the technology within our building division. I even would support a fee increase to support our building division, because our building division is woefully understaffed. It's inadequately supported from an IT perspective. Those are all things that we need, and frankly, are still going to be challenges even after this bill passes. So I've talked about this ad nauseum, for many years now. I am glad, for the Alderwoman from the 7th, bringing these issues to the forefront and into the discussion here at the board. But right now, as it's currently written, I don't think it's going to end up doing what it's intended to do. So I will be, and even though I support it in spirit, I'll be voting present on the bill. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd, that we third read and finally pass Board Bill number 180, Committee Substitute. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone.
Present.
Alderman Ryan. Alderman Balmer. Alderwoman Velasquez.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanier.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Aye. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
No.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer. Aye. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Boyd.
No.
11 aye votes, 2 no votes, and 1 voted present.
By your vote, you sustain the motion from the Alderwoman from the 7th to third read and finally pass Board Bill number 180.
Board Bill 60, Committee Sub as amended, sponsored by Alderman Narayan, President Green, Alderwoman Velasquez, and Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. An ordinance pertaining to the excise laws of the City of St. Louis, repealing ordinance number 68536, as amended by ordinance number 69346, and ordinance number 69346, presently codified as Title 14 of the Revised Code of the City of St. Louis, having as their subject matter definitions, establishment of the excise division, general regulation, general violation, general license, manufacturer, wholesaler, distributors, retail license, non-intoxicating beer license, license transfer, and enacting in lieu thereof a new ordinance pertaining to the same subject matter, containing a severability clause, emergency clause, and a penalty clause.
Alderman from the 4th, you're recognized on the third reading and final passage of Board Bill 60, Committee Substitute.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we third read and finally pass Board Bill 60, Committee Substitute as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 4th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we third read and finally pass Board Bill number 60, Committee Substitute as amended.
I
Alderman, you may proceed.
We spoke about this in depth last week, the excise reform bill. Again, this makes it easier for a restaurant to open up, doesn't affect bars and nightclubs or packaged liquor stores, other than to give the excise commissioner more teeth when we have bad actors. I ask for your favorable consideration.
Any further discussion? Alderman from the 3rd.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to make a point of clarification. I have not added my name as a sponsor to this, and actually the way that it's currently written, it would appear, and as much as I love her, that the Alderwoman from the 10th Ward and I are married, because it's Cohn-Clark-Hubbard, which that is not her last name, and as much as I would love for it to be mine, it's not. So I would just ask that the record be straightened out so that it reflects the Alderwoman from the 10th as a co-sponsor, but not the Alderperson from the 3rd. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Alderwoman from the 12th.
Madam President, members of the board, if the Alderman from the 4th?
Will the Alderman from the 4th yield to questioning from the Alderwoman from the 12th?
It would be my pleasure.
Alderwoman from the 12th, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. Alderman, I want to first of all thank you for cleaning that bill up. If we had passed that other bill, it wouldn't have been worth 2 cents.
There would have been some issues, certainly.
But can you go over, I'm still trying to, can you go over for me how the procedure would work with restaurants who want to open without having to get a platinum petition, and when they would have to get a platinum petition? Okay.
So if you're a restaurant, if you're opening up a restaurant at the same time that you get your business license and other things, there would be 2 tracks for you to get a liquor license. You could either do the traditional platinum petition route that we heard some restaurateurs say in committee that they actually appreciated because it gave them a chance to kind of advertise the fact that they were opening, let the neighborhood know, who they were, that kind of thing. There would also be an alternative track where you would apply, and as long as, so you'd apply, you'd have a hearing before the excise commissioner. There'd be notice sent out to everyone inside what the plat is. There's a postcard that would be mailed in a timely fashion to ensure that everyone was aware of it. And at that point, there's, I think, 13 criteria that are laid out for the excise commissioner to review, and ultimately, if you're not deemed to be kind of a nuisance or bad for the neighborhood, you can get a temporary liquor license. That would be a 90-day license. At the end of that 90 days, or as soon thereafter as the excise commissioner can hold another hearing, you would have the opportunity to renew that 90-day license for another 90-day period. At that renewal hearing, the excise commissioner would take into account the original 13 criteria, as well as look at your sales to ensure that you are a nightclub, or you are a restaurant, not a nightclub, or a bar, a tavern. You're not doing most of your sales in packaged liquor, things like that. And also look at CSB complaints and calls for service, 911 calls for service. So if you are a good neighbor, essentially, you may get another 90-day license. At the end of that 6-month period, there is another hearing where they again review that in front of the excise commissioner. And again, it's a public hearing, so anyone who wants to come in and testify in regard to any particular business can do so. The excise commissioner will again look at those criteria, again check the financial, look at CSB complaints, look at calls for service, so on and so forth. And if you are a good neighbor, then the excise commissioner may, and not shall, but may issue a permanent liquor license.
And so in that second one where you don't use platinum petition, when the excise commissioner sends out those cards, that card would be a notice that somebody has applied for a liquor license. would it also be a notice that there was going to be a hearing held and that they could come to the hearing and speak up?
Yes. So every step along the way, the people inside that traditional plat would get a postcard of that there is a hearing, when the hearing is, that they're able to come to the hearing, participate in the hearing. We want ultimately the neighborhood associations and neighbors to not only be aware of what's happening, but to actively weigh in. I mean, I come out of the neighborhood association world, and I think that small businesses typically thrive with the cooperation of neighborhood associations. So this actually gives neighbors and neighborhood associations, assuming you're in a neighborhood residential zone, this would give the neighbors 4 different hearings to come and discuss the restaurant and the liquor license before there was a permanent liquor license granted.
So in that first, in the one where I'm not talking about the plat and petition, okay? In the other one, so once the announcement of when the hearing was, they usually have hearings in the daytime, okay? Not in the evening. So if somebody could not come and if they still wanted to testify against it, could they send a letter or could they still do a petition for the neighbors saying, this is from us and we are opposed to that?
So yes to both of those. You can give written testimony that will be accepted, and you can still do what's called a protest petition under the excise code. So under the traditional plat and petition, you essentially have a race to 51% in between residents or landowners. And that would still be in effect. So you could do a counter, a protest petition, excuse me.
But usually the protest petitions have been after there has been some problems and they're coming back to get it. Now you would elevate the protest petition to say, since you're not having to do a plat and petition, we're protesting right now that we don't want that there. Is that correct?
Yes. So you could proactively protest petition something. Additionally, as is laid out in the bill, if there are issues, the kind of issues that we see people engage in the protest petition on, I think the excise commissioner is going to have a whole lot more teeth to shut those down, those bad businesses down, before you would even need to get to the protest petition process.
But I'm saying at the beginning when they first applied, if the people came and said, we just don't want liquor by our house, this is peaceful and quiet, we don't want it. And so if you had enough people that sent a protest petition in the beginning, is the excise commissioner prevented from issuing the temporary license, or does he just take that into consideration?
That's one of the things that he should take into consideration. There's by statute, I think there's 13 different criteria that whether you think someone's going to loiter, whether it's littering, whether so on and so forth. There's a lot of different criteria that go into that.
But you wouldn't really have that data if they were just starting. Okay?
Yes, and so
they had a restaurant someplace else.
So
you wouldn't have that data.
I agree, and that's why we went with a relatively short time frame before they would have to go back.
And that's how many months?
That's 90 days.
Okay.
Additionally, actually at your request, we made sure that we put in that this does not affect any areas with liquor moratoriums. So if there is an area that, historically people just do not want a restaurant to have a liquor license, there can be a moratorium there, and that would supersede the language in this bill.
And this is just about restaurants?
Exclusively restaurants that do more than half of their sales.
Okay. So after I just want to go through all of this. I've been, trying to get to where you are. So after the first notice, after 90 days, there would be another hearing. And then that would also have to be mailed out.
Exactly.
And the person who's paying for this mailing, of course, is the applicant because they want this, right? Which is much better than posting stuff up on trees and posts with
Exactly.
cranes and curls around. Our notice is ridiculous.
I mean,
at all.
I'm sure it's the same for you. The amount of calls I've gotten that, either the thing is blown away, someone's ripped it down, defaced it, or the rain has gotten on it and the letters run.
Exactly.
People don't know what's happening. This is in hopes of preventing that and encouraging input from them.
Right. Okay, so then the second hearing would be this is kind of like a progress report card. We're going to have another hearing. They still don't have the right to have a liquor license. They have the excise commissioner have let them have a liquor license, but we go through what behavior, and people can come and say, oh, this has been a horrible thing. They hang out, they make a lot of noise, blah, blah, blah. Or they can say, well, we like it. It's not what we thought it would be. Is that correct?
Exactly. I know at least in my neighborhood, and I've talked to some of our colleagues here, in some places, liquor licenses can be kind of a boogeyman also, almost. And then a month after a place is open, 2 months after a place is open, the neighbors go, I actually love that place. I eat there all the time. I'm so glad I can, have a glass of wine with dinner, have a beer with dinner. And so oftentimes you see that you have good business neighbors ultimately who not only really care about the neighborhood but actively invest in the neighborhood. I know that the restaurants around me in Dogtown, they are some of the biggest supporters of the things that the community is trying to do, both in terms of kind of cheerleading but also financially. They donate money in to make it so that parks are nice and there's different festivals and parades and all that kind of thing.
That's so nice. I only get them from gas station owners wanting to get me to support liquor license, which I famously don't take any of their money. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you. No, thank you. And I always remind them now, and they like, you could come over. No, I saw 3 people from this board over at your place. I'll just pass on that, okay?
Understood.
But I didn't take it anyway. I don't take from cigarettes. I have a list of people I don't take money from. So then that second, if they're doing okay, then they have a third hearing. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Would be at what point?
So that would be at the culmination of 180 days or as soon thereafter that they could be heard.
Okay, and at that point, they would then it wouldn't be temporary. If they passed all the bells and whistles, they would then get a permanent license.
Exactly.
Okay, but they would still be open to having their liquor license revoked with a protest petition or whatever.
Absolutely.
Right. And is there a point of which people can bring a protest petition? I know usually they bring it around the time that it's time for a renewal, but you actually always could bring it even if it wasn't time for a renewal.
Yeah, so we didn't change any of the language regarding the protest petition, so that process is the same as it's ever been.
Okay. And one other question I had. I always forget the last question. Okay. And you said, I know you have a lot of restaurants because we eat over there. The Greek restaurant, all kind of places that you have. You have Hispanic restaurants, everything over there. So we really want restaurants. That's been my mantra since I first got elected here, that we have no sit-down restaurants to speak of, and it's ridiculous. Anytime a whole part of the city doesn't have hardly any sit-down restaurants. I do have some now in the 12th ward because they were in the 4th ward, and so I do have some sit-down restaurants, which I'm going to really try to help with the corridor money to get them up and going better because some of them are well-known, and I'm going to famously have Sweetie Pies, which is very well-known, okay? So,
absolutely.
And I've been working on some others. Actually, I guess you've answered all. I don't have the same concerns that I had before. I want to say you did a good job. I really still don't like not having plat and petition, but the truth is sometimes plat and petition, they fool people, okay? So this is, if by having it mailed, they get to make their own decisions. do they notify, oh, I know what it was. Do they notify the aldermen still that an application for a liquor license has been there?
Yes, yes. So yeah, you should still get that same application. And I just want to note, in addition to you saying that sometimes the plat feels a bit rigged, I think that one of the things that we heard in committee that I hope that this addresses is we heard that some people didn't feel like maybe they were the right color to open a place in a certain neighborhood. That you know, it didn't matter whether they were the best restaurateur around. That the neighborhood, for reasons that should not be considered, frankly, just opposed them opening because they were in the wrong neighborhood, essentially.
And I've heard that. I don't know, because that would have to be in another part of town that I don't know about. I know that in my communities in North St. Louis, it is about your behavior. So when you hear us talking about certain ethnic people, it's their behavior. When you get 35 people arrested for illegal behavior, and they're all in one part of town, we weren't making that up, okay?
Sure.
Their behavior. None of them were black. None of them were white. None of them were Hispanic. None of them was any of that. There was a behavior going on that they get away with, and that's what I'm coming back. I'm glad you did this restaurant, because I'm coming back about something about gas stations, specifically in North St. Louis. The only place that they touch up against people's houses. If you build new gas stations in other parts of the cities, first of all, you have Quick Trip and everything else. But in North St. Louis, they touch up against your house, and they let them do everything. And that's why I never vote for the people at Board of Adjustment, because those are the people that did it, because we showed up each and every time just about and opposed them. And we already know that 3 members of our former board, 3 former members, were connected with those people. To me, they should never be able to get a gas station, a license. We should take all of their property, because they were indicted in 2017, and mostly nothing has happened to them. Whereas our 3 members went to jail. 1 has gotten out, famously resides in the 12th Ward, I won't say where, and everybody mostly who's gone to jail in the last 30 years have ended up my neighbor, because we have a halfway house. But I don't think that's fair, and I don't think it's a good trade. I don't like that they took bribes, and I've made this known over at the feds. But these other people were some really bad actors, and if I was going to send somebody to jail, all of them would have gone to jail, not these members. Not that I don't take up for them or anything like that. I just say they were not dangerous to the community. When you're doing guns and everything like that, that's dangerous. So people try to say, oh, they just don't like us because we're this ethnicity. We don't like you because you're bad actors and you have shootings. And it's like a swimming pool. It's an attractive nuisance, even if you're not doing it. If it's all around in your spot, that's an attractive nuisance. And you have to put gates and fences and everything else around an attractive nuisance. And if it doesn't stop, then you have to say, no, this is not a good place for that. So I don't know about if that's really the case. There's always going to be a race element. But sometimes I think people just don't want the problem, because once they get it, it's always been, as you and I have talked about, a nuisance. It's really hard to get rid of. It shouldn't be, but it is. And that's the other thing that we need to really address. Anytime our nuisance law, when they say we can't close something, but you've had 5 or 6 shootings, if you don't know that gunfire is a nuisance, we got some people who are pretty special.
Pretty substantial nuisance.
I'll take loud noise over gunfire. So I don't have any more reservations. I think you've done a good job. I'm going to vote for this bill.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Alderwoman.
Any further discussion? Alderman from the 5th.
Thank you. Hello. All right, let's leave the virtual world and go to the real world here. We have a Excise Commission, I believe, has, 3 or 4 employees? Currently, I'm not asking you questions. It's rhetoric. We all know. It's overstaffed. I mean, understaffed and overworked. And we're doing something here where it's easier to say I'm sorry than to ask please first when you're eliminating plat and petition. This is kind of like, let's show my age. We're doing, my, that's a lovely dress you're wearing, Mrs. Cleaver. It's the Eddie Haskell ordinance here where you're saying, yes, every 90 days we're going to come in and smile and say, yes, no, we've done nothing wrong. Don't slap our wrist and let's just, do this. But what I'm trying to say is this, you wake up, say you take a vacation for 2 weeks, come home, and all of a sudden there's a restaurant with a liquor license 3 doors down from you. You didn't receive anything. You don't know what's going on. When you eliminate neighborhood input and what's going on in your neighborhood, a liquor license, I've had one actually 5 years longer than Alderman Rashid has been alive. I found out his 30th birthday day. I've had a liquor license for 35 years. God, he was in grade school when I first got elected. So this is having had one of these and knowing how important it is and being part of neighborhoods and where people buy their houses and want to put their lives together, a liquor license can change a neighborhood. And to not have to go through a plat and petition, to every 90 days, hopefully maybe get a hearing. Say there's 25 liquor licenses applied for without plat and petition, they get them. Every 90 days, the excise board has no way of doing 25 hearings every 90 days. So you're talking about something that's going to do what we already have done. Well, we'll give you an extension. We'll give you an extension. That 90 days could be 180 days for the first hearing. So the reality is that you're dealing in a virtual world here. Yes, it's a nice thing to help people get businesses tax revenue, but you're eliminating oversight, which is very dangerous, and thank you very much.
Alderwoman from the 13th.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would the Alderman, Narayan, I'm horrible on what ward he's in. Would he take a question, please?
Would the Alderman from the 4th yield to questioning from the Alderwoman from the 13th?
Absolutely.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Okay. The concern that I have is because I'm hearing about these, that they're not doing the plat petition. And I'm hearing about them getting a 90-day liquor license for the restaurants. But I guess my concern is, because it's my understanding, and maybe it's just for liquor moratoriums, they have to have 50% food sales to even be granted this liquor license.
That's correct.
And so with a restaurant, they have to have 50% food sales. So if they're new and just opening, how they're going to produce that information? And they've never had, a restaurant. It's never been a restaurant out there.
So there is that. That's why we have that 90-day kind of check-in. That second hearing is so that the excise commissioner can verify their financials and say, okay, yes, you are doing more than half of your sales in food, that this is not a kind of a backdoor nightclub.
Okay, but, and so I guess I'm kind of confused because if I'm opening a restaurant, I have to have 50% food sales. I've never had a restaurant. So why would they give them a liquor license if they've never had it? How can they produce something that's the guidelines for the excise commission?
They are not producing those if it's not an ongoing restaurant, if it was a brand new restaurant, I think what we'll see is a lot of ongoing restaurants apply. But if it's a brand new restaurant, you would essentially have 90 days to do business and show those sales numbers then.
But you wouldn't get a liquor license, correct?
You may get a liquor license at an initial hearing on a temporary basis for 90 days upon opening. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just concerned about that because and I'm speaking for my community. I'm not speaking for because in downtown South St. Louis, as the Alderwoman from the 12th said, you all have the restaurants. We don't have the restaurants, and I want to have more sit-down restaurants in my community. But I want to make sure that people are respecting their community and following the guidelines. So they won't just come in through the back door and try to play games. So I would prefer if they didn't get a liquor license, show the 50% food sales, then come back to get a liquor license. I would be more comfortable with that.
Well, so
But I do know you can amend it and come back. I mean, that's fine. And so you've done a lot of work on this, Alderman Narayan, and I appreciate it. And that's just my fear, because I know the bad actors, is the Alderman from the 12 specifies in our community, and they try to play games and do things through the back door to try to avoid doing what they're supposed to do.
I certainly understand that, and that was something that we had discussed. But until you have both food and alcohol sales, you can't really compare the two, because I can't say 100% of your sales are going to be food sales if you aren't selling alcohol as well. And so what we're trying to do is to kind of a balancing act to say, hey, here's a chance, and if you are a rogue actor here and you're not doing what you say you're going to do, the excise commissioner can come in and shut you down, and you're not going to be renewed on your temporary license. And if you aren't renewed, that stops you. And if you're playing games and you're trying to open without the proper licensure, you also are barred from getting a liquor license for the next 3 years. So to the extent that you see people in some neighborhoods just opening without licensure, or saying that they're a restaurant and becoming a nightclub, having problems associated with the licensed facility, this bill gives the excise commissioner a whole lot more authority to shut down bad actors, whether they be restaurants, nightclubs, taverns, packaged liquor stores. There are new tools in the arsenal for the excise commissioner as a result of this bill.
Okay, and I think my last question to you is, in this bill, as the Alderman, I'm sorry, my brain is dead today. The Alderman Balmer had talked about, so how are we making sure, I think I had asked this before, making sure that the Excise Commission has the officers to be able to do the work?
So one of the things that we did in the budget cycle was gave the excise commissioner a pretty substantial increase to funding. The excise commissioner has hired and continues to be in the process of hiring additional officers, some of them on a per performa basis. And should this go through, there will be substantial man hours that are now spent on verifying signatures that could instead be spent out in the field, making sure that the establishments are acting the way that they are supposed to be acting under the law.
Okay, yeah, I think I had asked that before, and you gave a number, then you corrected it. And I just wanted to make sure that we didn't again pass legislation and put more on that office, and they don't have the substantial staff to support what we're trying to do.
I worked pretty closely with Miles McDonald's office on this bill, and they actually came and spoke in support of it at committee because it's going to free up some man hours over there and allow for them to hopefully get out into the field more, do more site inspections, and ultimately rein in some of the rogue actors.
Okay, thank you so much for answering my questions.
Absolutely.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, Alderman, you are recognized to close.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, I renew my motion.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 4th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we third read and finally pass Board Bill number 60, committee substitute as amended. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg. Aye. Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Balmer. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Aye. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Spencer. No. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Keys. Alderman Aldridge. Nine aye votes, 3 no votes, and 2 voted present.
By your vote, you sustain the motion from the Alderman from the 4th to third read and finally pass Board Bill number 60, Committee Substitute.
Board Bill 20, Board Bill 20, sponsored by Alderwoman Spencer. Board Bill 220, sponsored by Alderwoman Spencer, President Green, and Alderman Aldridge. An ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment appropriating $15,300,000 of interest funds earned on the city's funds received under the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 and authorizing the transfer of such funds for the Convention Center project purposes containing a severability clause and an emergency clause.
Alderwoman from the 8th, you're recognized on the third reading and final passage of Board Bill 220.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we third read and finally pass Board Bill 220.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 8th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 10th, that we third read and finally pass Board Bill 220. Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. Before I speak on the bill, I did want to note that Alderwoman Clark Hubbard had asked to be a co-sponsor, so I wanted that noted. She could be added as such.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that.
So noted. Thank you. We've talked about this. The Board Bill 220 is a board bill that authorizes the City of St. Louis through the Board of Estimate. It has been recommended by the Board of E&A to appropriate $15.3 million of the interest earned on our ARPA funds to the Convention Center. This is strictly the interest from the ARPA funds that we're allocating at this point to put towards the finishing of the renovations at the Convention Center. And with that, I'll take questions from my colleagues.
Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 12th.
Madam President, members of the board, if the Alderwoman from the 8th would yield.
The Alderwoman from the 8th yield to questioning from the Alderwoman from the 12th.
Yes.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
So, Alderwoman, we had a discussion last time about the Convention Center, and as I said, I've been here. Everything you're going to say, I heard it 30 years ago. None of it was true, okay? Not any of it. I always think that the problem with when people come back with the same thing and saying, well, this time it's going to work, no, it isn't. So I was surprised to see the Post-Dispatch, the Business Journal, and other people saying this thing is a big problem. Has anybody given you any idea? Because this is not going to be enough money either. And you were here when we appropriated the 40 years for $400 million, and then you were here when, and it was 30, not 40 million, when Jack Coder, the alderman from the 7th, we gave him another 30 million off the top of the Rams, and now you're coming with 15 million. Has anybody given you a final number of what they will need? And is there any number that you will say, okay, this is too much and you need to scale back? Because when you're rehabbing your house, if it keeps going up, at some point you have to say, I can't do all these things. So has anybody, first of all, has anybody given you a final number?
Alderwoman, you bring up an excellent point, and some of the recent coverage, which I've taken a look at and read myself as well, and those are valid points. I do not have a final number at this point. I'm unaware if one exists.
Okay, and is there a number where you would say it's too much?
Well, That's a good question. I can't say specifically what that number would be. I do have concerns. I share your concerns about additional costs and where this may end up. What I will say is that it's one of these situations where we have started the work. We've made commitments. Our convention center is, in my opinion, the doorway to our city for many people visiting, for businesses and potential residents and businesses who come to the city of St. Louis. And for that reason, I think investing in our convention centers as a general rule is a good investment for cities. One thing that is to be noted here, this $15 million isn't going to be given directly to the convention center. It does sit with the Board of Public Service. Until we identify specifically those projects that would be accomplished with this. I share your frustration, Alderwoman, on the timeline, the additional costs, the increase in costs due to the extended timeline and failure to get on board with the county, with the failure of the county to get on board with this project years ago, which has resulted in a ballooning of costs for this project. I share your deep concern about this and your frustrations. And that being said, I will also acknowledge that this is not an ideal solution. What we're doing is not ideal by any stretch. And so you're right to be frustrated and have concerns, and I share them.
The county doesn't have to build our convention center. That's the first thing I want to say. So I was here from the original negotiations, and so there were negotiations, but literally if they wanted to, they could probably find some land out in the county that they could build things. I'm also more frustrated as I got an email when I left your committee hearing, was that Wednesday? I got an email from the mayor's office talking about our earnings tax, which that was the hearing that I was having, and how that earnings tax was on its way to being partially removed, which is why I'm coming back really with my board bill and with some more exemptions that we have. I'm also hearing that the mayor is probably putting a hiring freeze into place, okay? So when you're looking at all of this, at some point, we got to look at what we're doing, and this is in the best interest. When you plan to go to Disney World, and then Daddy loses his job, you can't always go to Disney World. Okay, so when we gave them the $400 million for 40 years, Kitty Ratcliffe knew then, and the people who are running this, that it took a long time for the county to come aboard. And they promised us then, this is all we need. Then they came back, and they saw we have this pot of money, and they got it off the top. We haven't done much with it for anybody else, but I'm going to say this again. I've been saying this for 30 years. Downtown does not make the city. The city makes the town, downtown. If you go to places that have been a great place to live or are a great place to live, you can talk about, and I think we are a great place to live, but the ones that in the community people think are the top places to live, they didn't use their money to build their downtown at the expense of their neighborhoods. We're doing a poor job for the neighborhoods, and then we keep taking this chunk of money and putting it in the convention center. We also put it in a hotel that I said was going to go bankrupt, which it did, and then we had to come back and bail that out. And so, and we're on the second time for the convention center / football stadium / whatever else it is, and that none of this stuff has worked. So the ideal, if we just keep pouring money into it, it's not a good idea. I hope the mayor vetoes this bill, even if they did okay it. I hope she vetoes it, because now we're looking at having our money, and they being the E&A. If we don't have money to pay our firefighters, and we don't have money to pay our policemen, and we can't hire people, we already know we can't cut grass, we can't pick up trash, we can't. So we may have to look at this money for something else, and we may have to scale the project down. Sometimes you have to scale projects down with whatever you're doing. So at this point, the convention center is not the most important thing to me. And I guarantee you they will be back again for another chunk of money. And again, you'll be saying, if we can just get this done, and pretty soon our money will be gone. We're spending money on ARPA funds the interest for ARPA funds, and everybody's saying, well, this is just the interest, but we're not spending the ARPA funds. They're not being done the way they're supposed to. Every day or so, I hear people who are very irritated about what happened to the funds, what happened to the funds for North St. Louis, for the corridors. Why isn't it being spent? Why don't we have any monies for the seniors? We cannot continue to make downtown the center of something that it's not. You're going to suck up all the money. I went and researched. I wish we could have played them. What you're saying is the same thing Phyllis Young was saying in 1991 and 92. Okay, you're saying the same thing. You could impose you to, and you're saying the same thing, but it just doesn't work. It will not work. Your best assets you have in a city are the people who live in it. When your neighborhoods are crumbling and are not doing what they're supposed to, and then you're not going to have a good city. So I understand you represent it, and so you got to be the cheerleader for it. But I'm saying to you, it's not going to work, and I just wish that you would at some point look at, is there a number you wouldn't be out here trying to shield for? Because I've known Kitty for a long time, and she's never going to say this is enough. She's going to come back again, and you're going to be here saying, well, yeah, I know, we just gave them $15 million more, and that we're up to $455 million, and yeah, we probably need another $300 million or $200 million, and the neighborhoods are going to collapse. And we're going to continue to have people leaving this city. And yes, I'm very frustrated about it because I spent my career when I could have made a lot of money down here arguing that these bad policies that we're implementing are not a good idea. And now you show that they're not a good idea, and we're coming back and shoving the manure again. So you don't have you say you're frustrated, and you say you don't have a final number, but I'm going to just ask you again, if they come back for another $100 million, will that be too much?
Well, is that a question for me, Alderman? I didn't want to.
I beg your pardon?
Is that direct?
Yes.
Are you handing the floor to me? For one, Alderwoman, we don't have $100 million. So
sure we do.
Certainly,
we have Rams money. Because that's what you're talking about.
Your point well taken. Point well taken. Okay. But, Alderwoman, you bring up some really good points. I mean, you bring up the threat of our neighborhoods collapsing. I would argue that many of our neighborhoods are collapsing as we speak. It's particularly our north side neighborhoods. Since the 2020 census, we have lost 20,000 residents. That's 7% of our city's population has left the city of St. Louis in less than 4 years. This is tremendously alarming. And if we are not terrified about the future of our tax base, we should be. I will disagree with you, however. I do not think cities are made, neighborhoods make our downtown. There has to be a balance. Without a thriving downtown, we don't have a city. I would argue our region is really floundering. We're doing worse than stagnating. Our region is losing population. St. Louis County is also losing population, not as fast as the city of St. Louis is, but they are hemorrhaging people as well. We should all be very worried about this. Not just those parts of the region that are losing population, but even St. Charles, growing areas, because at the end of the day, their net benefit, their net growth is to the detriment of the region of which they are a part. And we are failing as a community to to be a thriving and growing place for ourselves, and worse, for our kids. The population loss that we are experiencing right now in the city of St. Louis is unprecedented. It is tremendously alarming, especially because it is not happening across the city. It is happening almost exclusively in North St. Louis. It is a very concentrated loss of a very specific part of our city's population. And if we aren't laser focused on addressing the population loss in our city, we are failing to do our jobs down here. The difference I see, I'm arguing that we have to have a thriving downtown to have a viable city. Our region needs our city to succeed, or the region will continue to fail. And we as a city have to have a thriving downtown in order for our city to succeed. And I do strongly believe that convention centers that amenities in our downtown core are critical to the success of our downtown and therefore to our city and therefore to our region. And if St. Louis County wants to try and put something, try to compete with our convention center, as you suggested, Alderwoman, they would be doing a disservice to the St. Louis region by a long shot. And so, as much as I do really agree with your concerns, I share your frustration. I can't imagine the pain that it must feel to be representing a neighborhood that's losing population the way that our North St. Louis is. But I do think this is part of the solution.
Thank you. So you didn't answer my question. Is $100 million too?
Alderwoman, I couldn't answer that right now because I don't know what that would buy us. And to your point, we don't know what we're specifically getting at this point. I do, however, believe that allocating these interest dollars towards this before we go on break is important to making sure that we have a path forward. Again, we're not giving this money to the convention centers, going to the Board of Public Service. There will be some oversight. There's going to be some, as you point out, we don't have those final figures. I don't have them, at least, if they exist. But I do have confidence that this is, at least right now, the best path towards a solution that we need.
So then what I'm hearing from you is there is no number, 100, 200 million, all of the Rams money that we have left. There's no number that's too much for them to ask for, because the only way we're going to fix our city is we fix our downtown first, and then we'll get to you. Never mind if generation after generation gets the hell up out of here because we never got to them. Right now, there are people downtown. So is that the answer, whatever it takes to fix it?
No, Alderwoman, I appreciate reiterating that because it wasn't my intention to say that. I do believe as a city we are failing our neighborhoods. And that is enormously problematic. We're failing to pick up the trash. We're failing to pave roads. We are failing to provide reliable public safety, a sense of security when you're walking down the street or driving in a car or even just sitting on your front porch. We are failing our neighborhoods. I am with you on that. But I do think that as a city, we can both drive economic activity in our downtown. I think it's critical to have a downtown that's thriving. Our downtown represents 17% of our tax base. It is enormous. It is an outsized portion of the revenue that our city is able to generate just to provide those city services. And without that...
And I get all of that. I'm going to just cut you a little bit. So you don't have a number. I know all the numbers, and they weren't always that. Okay, when I got elected down here, except for the Mansion House, there wasn't much downtown. It was still a little... I want to say Famous Bar was still there, and maybe Dillard's, but all this stuff was not there. We poured billions, $1 billion or more downtown. We poured it in. We overbuilt all these lofts and things like that, and now we have a problem with short-term rentals because we overbuilt. We took block grant money that should have been in North St. Louis and used it for downtown and the central quarter. That has always, if we just make this, it wasn't done because we wanted to help all parts. It was done because of racism. Much of it started down here, and then we closed our schools in North St. Louis. We actually have a board bill that started here. When I talk about the Team 4 plan, I've now found the original board bill. It started here. It talked about doing just what it's doing now. Don't cut the grass. Don't board up buildings. Don't rehab buildings. Don't do anything. Don't pick up the trash. That's how you take North St. Louis back. That is why I have also fought this. We also, as a Board of Aldermen, tore up the most middle-class ward in the city, the real 20th Ward, which the people didn't leave. They liked it. They liked it. We had built $57 million worth of stuff. It's real simple how you can keep. You show them that they're as important as downtown. And when downtown gets their share of money, you then don't come back and say, well, that didn't work. Because if they've gotten why don't we ever bring a budget before us saying, let's see how much we've spent downtown in the last 30 years. I can provide most of it. When I came down here, I had the Post-Dispatch, his name, the investigator. He did a whole thing about how they took all the block grant money and spent it in Central Quarter downtown, but they applied for it on North St. Louis. You go to jail if you apply for a loan and you apply for it for 4968 Maffett Place and you spend it at 4972 Maffett Place, that's fraud. We fixed the Chase Park Plaza up with some money that was supposed to be for not for a hotel, but for apartments. And then they paid it back after they did it and said, well, we're going to keep it as a hotel. That was fraud. A few people have gone to jail doing this thing. But my point to you is over and over and over again for 30 years, they have done it. And then we came up on this plan of we're going to do downtown the Central Quarter, and then we're going to spread out from the Central Quarter. So the black wards that got money was the 18th Ward, the 19th Ward, downtown, the 5th, anything that touched downtown to the Central Quarter got money, and you kept the other money from being there, and you kept me from having my seniority, which is what this ignorant board did, okay? Because you don't want the people who actually know how to do development and do things. That's what it is. You want to talk about racism and what happens? That's what happens, is that racism happens right here. We pass bills, and the people who represent North St. Louis who win and say, hey, that's not good for us. Oh, but yeah, we're going to vote for that. You can't have it coming out of your mouth both ways. Either I know what's good for North St. Louis, and after 30 years and all the fights that I've had with everybody, and I still beat all of them, that's the people saying, this is who I want to represent my point of view. Because what I'm bringing you is middle class and working black people. That's who's leaving here because of the policies that come from this racist board and for the last 30 years and from the racist mayor that we had by the name of Francis Slay. Okay? And so don't try to act like, oh, well, see, we just don't know what happened. It was policies. It was implemented, and then we come back and we keep taking a part of the money and spending it in one area or two areas or other areas. Your area that was the real 10th Ward had an alderman who didn't want to do a lot of things. You want to talk about the one previous to you. I want to talk about the one that was there before him. He fought everything. And your neighborhoods went down, down, down. That wasn't because of racism. That was because of incompetence, okay? When we talk about over in North St. Louis, we talk about racism, keeping the money away from North St. Louis and just passing bills anyway because you're not trying to, because there's a plan. And one of our famous former mayors famously said, you don't have to adopt a board bill to implement a plan. You could just look at that plan that came from this Board of Aldermen by somebody who became a congressman, and you could see that plan was implemented, and it's continuing to be implemented. And you talk about how our trash is not being picked up. I saw the story about in your community. For the 2 years that I was the chair of Streets, Traffic, and Refuse, I brought it up over and over and over again, not just about my community, but I brought up the trash for the whole city of St. Louis. I brought up the paving the streets, what we were doing. Nobody cares about stuff until it happens to them. Then they go, oh my God, what's happening here? The people who didn't believe crime was real and thought, oh, it's all right if it's in North St. Louis. That's okay. Then say they're surprised when a lady gets hit over the head on Lindo and her purse gets snatched. I didn't expect it here. When people say that statement, I want you to know, when you're saying you don't expect it on Lindo, why do you expect it on Maffett Place at Kings Highway Memorial Boulevard? By the way, it's not North Kings Highway. Kings Highway Memorial Boulevard. Why do you expect it on Natural Bridge? Why is traffic calming so important now when for many, many years we had people getting killed every week almost at Natural Bridge and Fair? Not in my ward, but almost every week somebody was getting killed. It was not important. It is because we let our mouth say a lot of things, but our votes are very, very different. Because you have to make hard choices. You have to say, hey, you've been getting all that money. Let's see what happens. When I put $57 million worth of new stuff in my ward, my community didn't leave. They said, oh my God, we got a school, a grocery store. I still got my Walgreens because I've been reaching out to Walgreens. It took me 12 years to get the Walgreens that was going every place else. but I'm reaching out to them and talking to them and saying, what can I do? I still got my bank. I got a credit union. When people come to the park, they're like, how did this get done? It got done because I know how to do that. And I'm married to somebody who's a city planner who knows how to pick up the phone and say, hey, you know, Sharon is trying to do this. Can we help? So connections, we've used our connection, but everybody doesn't have that connection. But this city is responsible for me not standing here 30 years later and saying, we don't have a hardware store. Because I know how hard Geraldine Osborne and Marty Abusi worked to get the hardware store on South Kings Highway. And when we got it, I drove from North St. Louis all the time to support that hardware store because I was so glad we had a hardware store in the city again, because we lost Central Hardware and we lost HQ and another one. We don't support the communities correctly, and then we say, well, that happened under another a person or another board or another mayor, but it affects your future. So the crime that you don't see happening in your neighborhood, if you have cancer in your left hand, you're going to get cancer in the rest of your body if you don't address it. I was famous for saying to black aldermen when we had 28 wards, I didn't take a lot of the stuff for certain social programs. I didn't need them. Just let me build stuff. Because the more things I build, then the more things, if it's successful over here, then maybe it'll be successful in the next neighborhood and the next neighborhood. And that is exactly what happened. When we built Walgreens at Kings Highway and Natural Bridge, then Michael McMillan got that Walgreens at Grand and Cass because they wouldn't do it before that, but they were wildly successful there. And unfortunately, minorities, and not just black people, have to prove their worth all. But the city is not supportive. So when we come back to try to spend all of this money again on something that we've already done, there's no reason for that. That's like telling your oldest child, you got everything. And then when the youngest child comes, well, we got to keep pouring the money into the oldest child. No, at some point you have to say, no, this is not a good expense. And especially if that child has messed up and has not done what it's supposed to be. We want to compete with other towns. How about we just compete with what our cities? How about we compete with what we have? Sometimes you don't get to have everything somebody else has. And that's, I guess, I'm come from a working class background. So my mother was good at saying, because we can't afford that. Or no, because I don't raise them. My stepfather, we don't raise them. We raise you and your sister to have values. But I have heard for 32 years, if we just fix up downtown and give them another $1 billion and spend some more money. And then when they mess up, we got to find a problem. The short-term rentals are really a problem that was created by bad legislation and given too much to downtown. Not one person stood up and said, this is our fault. They said, oh, we got to fix this. We are not going to fix downtown by giving more money. And when we continue to pour money into something like the convention center over and over again, and we lose the ability to hire new people, we're not going to get our trash picked up. So those ladies that were out in the alley talking about trash not being picked up, they're going to be out there more because we're saving the Rams money for some transformative thing. What is that transformative thing? We're saving the ARPA money. We can't help citizens. When I come back here, I have written a bill called the Taxpayers' Bill of Right. We attack taxpayers and homeowners as though they have, property owners, that they have done something wrong. It is not a crime to own property and pay your taxes, not get tax abatement, do what you're supposed to do. It's a crime when people force gas stations with liquor into your neighborhood, force little convenience stores, which are really not convenience stores. That's the crime, and they don't come from us. And every black ward just about can tell you the story of how that was forced into their community and how they had to fight it because that wasn't something that the community wanted. That was something some downtown wanted. When I stand here and tell you one of those stores had 7 gunfires around that store last year, and it's right across the street from a school, but yet nobody can figure out how to close it because they don't want to, because that's all right. Let it stay there. They got a solution for downtown only, and the solution for downtown is to pour more money. And that's not the solution. And I disagree with you about saying that it's the economic, the reason is that we need it for the economic engine. That's because we made it that way, not because it had to be that way. Clayton didn't develop that way. Clayton was a bedroom community, and then they built up their downtown. When you look at some of the places like, well, I won't say Huntley, because they don't even have they go to Frontenac to shop, I guess, because they don't even have a really business. But when you look at Maplewood, Kirkwood, and all those places, they had a bedroom community. A business is supposed to serve the community. The rest of the metropolitan area uses St. Louis as a playground. And we're so busy making sure those hotel rooms are full downtown that we're not listening to the people saying we're unhappy. The streets are not paved, not because we don't have money sitting up there, because we're just not doing it. And there's no reason. In fact, Rich Bradley testified at my committee that the money that we had that was supposed to be spent 2 years ago in April wasn't spent because he was waiting for the mayor to come up with this traffic calming plan she was going to have. The traffic calming became just a few streets that was paved mostly in South St. Louis. It is unfair to keep spending this money. It is not going to be something that is going to help this city. This is a boondoggle. It is not successful. It was not been successful for the last 32 years. It is not going to be successful for the next 40, 50, 60 years. Our grandkids are going to be here saying, hey, what happened? Why did this happen? It happened because we keep saying the same thing. We keep saying, if we could just fix downtown. Downtown can't be fixed because it's a problem, that we're overstepping our boundaries, that we don't have the money. We have our tax base based on getting earnings tax, which as we speak right now, that earnings tax is being taken away from us by a Republican agenda and by some very wealthy people who don't want us to have an earnings tax. If we lose a third of our income, which is what the earning tax is, we may need that $15 million in interest to help keep our firefighters or our police paid. So you just overrode the mayor's veto about the firefighters' pension. You're the chair of budget. I don't know how this budget works, where we just keep going full steam ahead, a piece at a time, and we don't have anything in the column that says this has been done in North St. Louis. Put some money for North St. Louis and get it spent. Come talk to me. Then tell me how this works, that we just keep putting all the money downtown or in the central quarter and then saying how important it is. If you only spend money on giving your oldest child a law degree or becoming a doctor, and you tell all the other children in your family, we can't do anything for you, of course the oldest child will be the most important, the one that has the degree, the law degree, the one that's the doctor, the ones that runs their own business, because you put all the money there. But you haven't done anything for the rest of the family. That is what we're doing. I don't care about North St. Louis being an economic engine. I care that people have the same quality of life that other people have, and they have not. They used to have it. When they tore up my community, they had it. They know what it's like. They've worked real hard to be equal partners in this city, but they don't get tax abatement. They don't get anything. They just watch us year after year after year after year spend hundreds of millions, $1 billion downtown. So as I said before, when I came here in 1991, we had the Mansion House. We were so proud when we put the St. Louis downtown, what was the shopping mall that we put that was down St. Louis Center. We opened St. Louis Center, dead and gone. Almost everything we did not work, but we continue to just pour that money into the city, downtown anyway, and then tell us one day it's going to work. It's like Jack and the Beanstalks. Throwing the magic beans downtown. It's not going to work. This is not a good idea to give this money. Since the mayor has put out that she is going to has a hiring freeze, then first thing you should do is tell Kitty and those people over at the convention center, cut back, we can't do this because we don't have the money. And we ought to be very careful about what we're doing if we are going to lose our earnings tax, any portion of it. And we ought to also get rid of all those exceptions, because we have 3 or 4 exceptions in our earnings tax right now that are for wealthy people. Because we have sent a message in the city of St. Louis that wealthy people or areas that we decide are important are the ones that get the money, and the rest of it is, we'll get around to you. It was 30 years ago, in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, but it's 30 years and we have not. And this is a mistake. And I want to thank the Post-Dispatch, the Business Journal, and the other people who usually are the cheerleaders for this kind of thing, pointing out that this is a boondoggle and we don't have the money. And we're throwing good money after bad. We should not be doing that. Thank you. And I don't have any further questions for you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, Alderwoman from the 8th, you are recognized to close.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I just want to echo the concerns that the Alderwoman from the 12th had about our city's future, about serving our neighborhoods. I will say, we have to have an economic engine. None of our neighborhoods pay for themselves. Our downtown really subsidizes and helps to provide funding for the basic city services that our residents need. And I am deeply concerned about our city's viability if we continue hemorrhaging population like we have seen. I do share concerns about the costs and what the final price at the end of the day will be. And as the chair of budget, I am committed to continue to keep my eye on this, the eye of the committee on this, and to continue probing into where we're going with this. I further share concerns about the announcement this morning about the hiring freeze. I think this should be enormously alarming to all of us. The fact that we have a hiring freeze, and it was pointed to concerns about the earnings tax, and this Board of Aldermen through the Budget Committee tried to engage with the administration on these concerns and was unable to do so, was told that the administration and her staff could not come down and educate this Board of Aldermen on these concerns, and is now making a major public announcement this morning while we're in session and never having any direct communication with the policymaking body of this city. If my colleagues down here don't find a problem with that, we all should. Everybody, excuse me. I've been eating some almonds, and they're very good.
Take a minute to swallow, Alderwoman.
Thank you. Drink some water before. Thank you, Alderwoman. But we should. Oh.
I would not trust anything that the Alderman tries to make.
I'm good. Visit his office. It's caffeinated. But in all seriousness, if the administration is going to fail to engage with the policymaking body of our city on these major financial issues, an issue that is so potentially grave that we have, as of this morning, instituted a hiring freeze, we at the Board of Aldermen cannot be expected to do our jobs, to represent the best interests of the people that elected us, the citizens of St. Louis, represent our collective best interest. So to vet this bill in light of the hiring freeze is completely impossible for us to do right now because we don't have the information or the communication from the administration to do that. And I will tell you, I've only been down here for 10 years, but I have never, in my 10 years down here, seen this level of disengagement from the city's administration with the Board of Aldermen. We are the policymaking body. It is our job to vet these things and to determine what it is that we should be doing on behalf of our citizens. So in light of that, I will say this continues to be, in my opinion, in the best interest of our citizens. We do need to have a flourishing downtown and an economic engine of our city and our region that is moving forward and at the very least upholding the promises we made to future convention goers about the work that our convention center would be doing. And with that, I renew my motion to third read and finally pass Board Bill 220.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 8th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 10th, that we third read and finally pass Board Bill number 220. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg. Aye. Alderman Cone. Aye. Alderman Ryan. Alderman Valmer. Alderwoman Velazquez. Aye. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
No.
Alderwoman Boyd.
No.
Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Keys. 11 aye votes and 3 no votes.
By your vote, you have sustained the motion from the Alderwoman from the 8th to third read and finally pass Board Bill 220.
Board Bill 228, sponsored by Alderman Cone. An ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller of the City of St. Louis to enter into and execute on behalf of the city on airport passenger vehicle rental concession agreement with the concessionaires listed on Exhibit B, containing the severability clause.
Alderman from the 3rd, you are recognized on the third reading and final passage of Board Bill 228.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to move, I would like to move that we pass Board Bill 2...
Read and finally pass.
Agree to finally pass Board Bill
228.
228.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 3rd, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th, that we third read and finally pass Board Bill number 228. Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. Board Bill 228 is a lease agreement for the airport. This deals with the auto concessions and lease arrangements for the auto rental places at the airport, and I would ask for a roll call vote.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, it's been moved by the Alderman from the 3rd, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th. Third read and finally pass Board Bill 228. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Ryan. Alderman Valmer. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderman Aldridge. 13 aye votes and 1 abstain.
By your vote, you have sustained the motion from the Alderman from the 3rd to third read and finally pass Board Bill number 228. Reported the finally passed and signed by the President.
Board Bills 96 as amended, 180 committee sub, 60 committee sub as amended, 220, and Board Bill 228.
All other business being suspended, the President shall in open session affix her signature here to the end that these may become law. First reading resolutions in reference to committees.
Resolution 214, sponsored by Alderwoman Velazquez, President Green, Alderwoman Schweitzer, Alderman Cone, Alderwoman Sanye, Alderman Browning, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderwoman Boyd, and Alderman Aldridge, supporting the closure of the Puerto Rico Act 22 loophole.
Alderwoman from the 6th, you are recognized on the first reading of Resolution 214.
Thank you, members of the board. I want to thank all the folks who co-sponsored this resolution. As you probably know from earlier today, I'm Puerto Rican. And when we talk about, we have a word that we say, we refer to ourselves as diasporicans, that we are of the diaspora. And as we look at what's happening on the island right now, there is massive amounts of gentrification, and rents since Hurricane Maria have gone up nearly 600%. Issues that we see here in St. Louis, but obviously different. So I am grateful for the support of the board, and I would ask that we pass this with unanimous consent.
It's been moved. Here, no objection to unanimous consent. Alderwoman, you may proceed. Ask for adoption.
I ask for adoption of this.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderman for the 14th, that we adopt resolution number 214. And it's any further discussion? Alderman for the 14th.
They should never get me. Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I just want to thank our Alderwoman from the 6th Ward for bringing this forward and uplifting her Puerto Rican heritage and representing this board so well. I want to thank her for her leadership, as well as Congresswoman Cori Bush, who is leading the similar charge on the federal level to make sure that this loophole is closed. I've been able to learn about this from the Alderwoman, and clearly it's a huge problem. So again, I just want to thank her leadership as well as our Congresswoman on trying to close this loophole. So thank you, Alderwoman.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, it's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th, that we adopt resolution 14. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Second reading of resolutions, committee reports and adoptions.
Report from the Special Committee on Long-Term Health Care Committee, the adoption of the Long-Term Health Care Crisis Pathways to Safe and Dignity Report for All.
Alderman for the 14th, you're recognized on the adoption of the Long-Term Health Care Crisis Pathways to Safety and Dignity Report for All.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to move to adopt the Long-Term Healthcare Special Committee report that we created.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt the Long-Term Health Care Crisis Pathways to Safety and Dignity Report for All. Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. First, I actually want to thank you, Madam President. Back at the beginning of the session, you brought resolution number 13 forward to continue the Special Long-Term Healthcare Committee. This is a committee that you had established before the session but continued it. There are several alder people that has been involved that was chairs and just part of this process. I want to thank Alderwoman Pam Boyd, who was my vice chair this session, Alderwoman Sanye, who is a member on the committee. Also want to thank former Alderwoman Ingracia, as well as former Alderwoman Miss Lisa Middlebrook, who also was part of the committee over the last year that this committee has been going on. There's several people, and I would be remiss if I said all their name, but there's been so many stakeholders that have been part of this conversation. As you know, Madam President, you charge this committee to come up with solutions that will hopefully try to change the landscape of our long-term healthcare facilities. We recently, as this committee was going on, we had seen how one shut down an Alderwoman of the 12th Ward community. And what we learned post-COVID, COVID has impacted a lot of people, but especially our seniors that are in these long-term healthcare facilities. So there is a report that is in the drive that everyone can be able to see. Out of that report, there are several policy recommendations from the state and federal that we came up with, but also on the local level that I just want to read a few that the committee had charged, hopefully this board, to be able to pass some of these recommendations in the near future to improve the quality of life in these long-term health care. Some of the recommendations are asking the St. Louis Board of Aldermen to pass a resolution supporting the nursing home staffing standards and financial transparency policy proposed by President Biden and the Federal Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services. Asking the St. Louis Board of Aldermen to submit a copy of this report to the Missouri Legislature, the Missouri Department of Health and Human Services, and the Federal Center of Medicaid and Medicare Services. The board will also submit this report to St. Louis County, Kansas City Council, and Jackson County Council for their consideration. The report is also asking that the St. Louis Board of Aldermen should support funding and expand de-escalation training, safety training, infection control training for nursing home staff. One thing that we learned in the report, a lot of our individuals who are staff members, they have to do a lot of sometimes restraint to members who are in these facilities for either mental health reasons or other reasons, but they're not getting the proper de-escalation training, let alone the proper financial support to be able to do this job. They're also asking that the Board of Aldermen will create a permanent nursing home safety officer position, which will be responsible for helping residents and workers across the healthcare and safety resources to seek readdress via existing and appropriate state and federal funds. There's two more, but I'm just going to read one last one in lieu of time. They're also asking that the St. Louis Board of Aldermen should empower and require the Division of Building and the inspectors to use right of entry to access nursing facilities where there is reasonable cause to believe that there is existing in the structure upon the premise of a condition which makes the structure or premise unsafe, dangerous, or hazardous, and report observed unsafe conditions, therefore, in the Missouri Department of Health, Senior Services, and the Federal Center of Medicaid and Medicare. Again, Madam President, thank you for convening this body. Three key things that we really focus on in this report was the changes in ownership. Right now, a lot of these facilities, as we've seen with one that shut down, they're very slick in the way that they create these non-for-profits and for-profits facilities, and they use constantly these shell corps to kind of dodge financial obligations, as well as we were able to see just the change in resident population. There's been a dramatic change in younger individuals actually going into these nursing home facilities, and then changes in the staffing practice. Again, our staff that are in these facilities are paid not just good wages, they're paid underpaid with doing a hard job, and they're also not getting the necessary training that is needed to be able to take care of our most vulnerable. Again, thank you, Madam President. Thank you to all the alder people that was part of this and all the members of the community that spent countless hours on this committee to come up with this recommendation. These recommendations to hopefully improve the quality of life of the individuals that are in these facilities, as well as the standard and practice of these long-term health care facilities.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 7th.
Members of the board, I want to make sure that I thank Alderman Aldridge as well as Alderwoman Boyd for her work, and also the huge coalition of healthcare workers who came together to work on the report. When I was reading through it and reading some of the data, it was really heartbreaking to see the conditions that some of the folks in our city are living in, and some of the ways that they're not getting treatment. My mom is a nurse, and I even took some time to kind of read through with her and talk with her, and really just evaluated the very real dangers of putting profit over people. And it seems like a lot of facilities that are operating in our city that are supposed to offer, long-term health care to people who really need them are really putting profit over people, whether that is putting multiple patients who really should be getting specialized care and treatment in one place, whether that is putting folks, with mental health challenges with folks with other challenges, whether there's severely and intentionally understaffing places, whether that is severely underpaying workers, even cases where workers were not paid what they were supposed to be for hours that they're worked. It just seems to be a lot of, honestly, almost corruption. In a lot of cases, you're seeing that these patients and sometimes the workers who are not in position advocate for themselves are just completely exploited. And so I'm just glad that we are lifting up this conversation, and I really look forward to us talking about, and of course the state legislator has a lot of power over this, and I wish that they spent more time worrying about the quality of life and care that people are getting, but I look forward to us talking as a board about what things we can do to help the workers or the folks who are getting the care. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 12th.
Madam President, members of the board, unfortunately, Northview Village was one of the nursing homes right across the street from me. I actually look at it from the back of my kitchen that closed down. But besides that, also involved is next to it, because Northview Village is a part of Old DePaul Hospital. And the Old DePaul Hospital had 3 parts to it, and they rehabbed 2 parts. One is a nursing home and one is a senior citizens home. And the 3rd part they never did. Besides Northview Village having a problem, the other problem is now they're having a problem, much as they did with the heritage houses going on, is that 50-50 Highlanders, which we call it, is now the elevators not working, and it's all kind of things. I heard the alderman say that he wanted that one of the recommendations is that we should be able to go in as needed. We already can. Under conservation district, once it's been in a conservation district, you can actually go into properties that have been under the conservation district. So we already can go into those things. In fact, 50-50 Highland, we almost had shut down because it was so bad and they were not doing things. So besides it being long-term health nursing homes, it's also now becoming the senior buildings. I think what I see as the problem, because what I learned is that after I had donated money, is that I found out that the state and federal government had given them money at Northview Village that no one knew about, and that this money was supposed to be used to pay workers. And so they just moved money around. We have a problem with the city, the local government, the state government, and the federal government not knowing what one another is doing, okay? We only find out when there's a problem. No one expected a nursing home this size to close, but to me, we need a group that works together about what's going on. We had an attack at this Board of Aldermen about aldermen being involved in whatever happened at LRA. And I never went along with that because LRA commissioners can't know what's going on in your community. It's the same thing with these senior buildings and things. A lot of times the people that are local know what's going on. And if you don't have somebody from local, state, and federal government talking to each other, or somebody from the Congresswoman's office, somebody from the state rep and state senator's office, somebody from the Board of Aldermen, if we're not talking and letting people know what's going on, then things get by us. I absolutely did not know. No one said, hey, we're giving this guy a lot of money over in the ward to pay his workers. Only time I knew about that they didn't get paid was December the 15th, I think it was, or thereabout, when I got a call saying, Alderwoman, they're closing this place down, and they didn't pay the people. They did end up paying them one time, but I don't think they got their second paycheck. But if we had a better line of communication, I would just offer from federal and state, and we do need to know, not to stop things from happening, but to be able to say, hey, you better watch out. This is a bad actor, or this is not something that's happening. There's no way that the Congresswoman's office could have known what was going on in Northview, but I do hear what's going on. I still didn't know, and it's in my backyard, but I did hear some of the things that were going on. So if we had better communications between the different levels of government, I would add, then it would be a better thing for this not to happen again, because besides this happening in nursing homes, it's happening now in senior citizens' homes. And some of that also goes with the laws that the government made about, it used to be senior citizens only were for senior citizens. Then they passed a law, and somebody thought it was a great idea. Well, what about the people that are in wheelchairs? We'll let them be there too. Never knowing that some of the people in wheelchair are bad actors. And so they're not all people who are just in wheelchairs because they were born that way or something happened. These are people that committed crimes, and they started getting in these senior buildings and even in these nursing homes, and they were wreaking havoc there. They're selling drugs, they're having prostitution, all kind of things. Crime is going up. So they're making the people who should be there rightfully and getting care they're not getting the care that they're supposed to because somebody on the federal level said this is what should happen. And we should have had somebody who could have said this is not a good idea, this is, or even now to lobby to say this is not a good idea because you make it very hard for people to be in nursing homes or senior buildings when you have people who have committed crimes that are in there with them, and they are at their most vulnerable moments, and they need to rely on getting good health care. I want to thank all those who worked for the long-term health care. Anything solution we have is better than what we had, but I think that we're going to need to come up even with more kind of recommendations, as I said, about having some kind of group of people that work together with different levels of the government as a way to keep abreast of things that are getting passed that would negatively affect the positive outcomes in long-term health care. I had a family member that stayed in a nursing home for over a year. I was in charge of him, and it is a very hard job. I actually was off the board, so that was good. I was able to go and stay there and be there almost every day, and my family was there every day, and he's up and walking about. But it is a wonderful service that they provide if they're able to do it the correct way. And before any government branch gives a facility such as this money to help them out, they need to investigate them more thoroughly so that we're not just giving money and then finding out the people are switching that money around and paying themselves. We need to look at their budgets better, because I do believe that Northview Village could have been stopped had we had a better audit of their finances and what was going on, instead of just throwing money at them and saying, pay your workers with this, and then not find out until they closed that they weren't paying their workers with this. So this is a good start, and I appreciate it. But I do think that we're going to need to look at some other things, maybe even asking some federal laws or state laws be implemented, because I know the state is still looking at what went on at Northview Village, and hopefully we could get something that's a little tighter and not so quick to just throw money at it if the people are not doing the right things. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, it's been moved by the alderman from the 14th, seconded by the alderperson from the 7th, that we adopt the long-term health care crisis pathways to safety and dignity report for all. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Motion carries.
That's the extent of second reading, resolutions, and committee reports.
Miscellaneous and unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Tuesday, April 2nd, HUDS will have a committee hearing in the Kennedy Room at 11 a.m. Legislation will have a webinar at 2 p.m. Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024. Public Infrastructure will have a committee hearing in the Kennedy Room at 3:30 p.m. Thursday, April 4th. Public Safety will have a committee hearing at 1 p.m. in the Kennedy Room, and Public Safety Prop S Subcommittee will have a hearing in the Kennedy Room at 3 p.m. Friday, April 5th, full board meeting in the chambers at 10 a.m. That's the extent of the announcement.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Seeing none. Alderwoman from the 7th.
Madam President, members of the board, I just wanted to give a reminder to anyone out there that we are having our Easter egg extravaganza in Gravois Park tomorrow. I believe it starts at 10, and so just want to make sure you all know I will be there. The kids know that I take too. So just want to make sure if anyone is interested in celebrating, I know those different events will be coming amongst us, so I want to see all the little ones with their cute ponytails and bunnies and chocolate. And I also think that there is another event, but it's in a different ward, so I'll let that alder bring it up. Thank you.
Alderwoman from the 12th.
Madam President, members of the board, I want to remind everyone that today is Good Friday. This is the first time in 30-some years that I've ever been at the board on Good Friday. I would ask the Personnel Committee, when they're setting agendas, to take in mind that everybody has different religions. But for me, this is a very important day for a lot of people who are religious and who believe in the Bible and in certain religions. Let's not have any more meetings on Good Friday. There are some people that are not here today because they celebrate Good Friday. I would have liked to be one of them. As soon as I leave here, I'm going to go spend time with my family. I would like to ask the Personnel Committee to please take that into effect when you set the agendas.
Thank you. Alderman for the 14th.
Madam President, members of the board, also just want to echo Happy Good Friday, everybody. For the ones who do celebrate it, I know we're going into a resurrection and Easter, however you do it, or celebrate it, but Happy Good Friday, and also Happy Cowboy Carter album release from Beyonce. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, my understanding is there's another announcement.
Thursday, April 4th, 2024, Health and Human Development will have a committee hearing at 9 a.m. via webinar.
Thank you. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderwoman from the 10th, you're recognized on the motion to excuse.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. All members were present this morning. Happy Good Friday.
Alderwoman from the 10th, you're recognized on the motion to adjourn.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we adjourn until Friday, April 5th, 2024, in the Board of Aldermen chambers.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adjourn until Friday, April 5th, 2024, in the Board of Aldermen chambers. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Rasheen.